Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You're joining us for your focused session today, and we're really zeroing in on the essential knowledge nuggets pulled straight from your source material.
That's right. Think of us as navigating that stack of info you've got.
We've got quite a collection here, specifically focusing on key developments from June 12th, 2025. This is part one of our look at the day's current affairs.
Yep, designed to give you that targeted understanding you need.
And for many of you, especially those using this as part of your, UPSC preparation, you might hear some themes, maybe specific points we've touched on before.
Oh, definitely. That happens a lot in current affairs.
It does. And revisiting them it reinforces their importance, helps solidify things. So think of those bits as a crucial revision.
Exactly. Building that foundation, consistency, it's key.
So looking at the sources you shared, what's the plan for today? What are we covering?
Okay, so we're going to explore some significant global efforts around ocean health. Then we'll look at population trends, some really fascinating stuff there. Then, breaking down urban governance structures, analyzing flood management strategies.
That's always critical this time of year.
All right. Then a closer look at a controversial infrastructure project in a sensitive area.
Yeah.
We'll also dive into the microfinance sector.
And wrap up with a few quick takes from other areas, too.
Yeah, a few concise insights. It's quite a mix.
It really is. Connects the global to the very local, doesn't it? International commitments, local impacts, economic health.
Absolutely.
Right then. Ready to unpack what's important from these sources?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's jump right in. And maybe start with something really big picture. The ocean.
Yeah, what stands out straight away is the launch of the Blue Nationally Determined Contributions, the Blue NDC Challenge.
Blue NDC Challenge, okay.
Spearheaded by Brazil and France. They brought together an initial group, 8 countries, includes places like Australia, Fiji, Kenya, Mexico.
Okay, Blue NDCs. So NDCs are those national climate action plans, right? So the idea here is pushing countries to specifically bring the ocean into their climate commitments before COP30.
That's exactly it. Making the ocean central, not just, an add-on.
And this isn't just happening out of the blue. There's organizational support.
No. The sources mention support from Ocean Conservancy World Resources Institute. It's facilitated through something called the Ocean Resilience and Climate Alliance. It's coordinated.
But why the big push now? Why is the ocean so critical in the climate context?
That's a really good question. And the sources give some strong reasons. I mean, the ocean is just a powerhouse for climate regulation.
How so?
It absorbs about 30% of global CO2 emissions. That's huge. A massive carbon sink.
30%. Wow. And I think I saw something about specific coastal habitats.
Yes, exactly. This is where it gets really interesting. Coastal ecosystems, think mangroves, seagrasses. They're incredibly good at sequestering carbon.
Oh, good.
The sources say they can do it at rates up to 4 times higher than terrestrial forests.
4 times. Okay, so protecting those specific spots gives you a lot of bang for your buck climate-wise.
Precisely. And it's not just carbon. The ocean also takes up something like 90% of the excess heat from greenhouse gas emissions. It's our main heat regulator.
Soaks up heat, soaks up carbon.
And offers huge potential for clean energy. Offshore wind alone, the potential is there to meet over 1/3 of global electricity needs.
Right, so a healthy ocean is just fundamental. For mitigation, for adaptation. You can't separate it.
Absolutely non-negotiable.
The sources also mentioned ongoing efforts, didn't they? Existing things.
They did. Things like marine protected areas, designated zones for conservation, and the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development.
That runs until 2030.
Yeah, 2021 to 2030. Really focused on boosting the science needed to, reverse the decline in ocean health.
And it's worth noting, India's active here too, with its own initiatives like MIA-STI.
Mangrove Initiative.
And the Deep Ocean Mission. So this global Blue NDC call seems to fit with national strategies already happening.
Definitely. If you connect the dots, this Blue NDC challenge is a big push to formally embed ocean conservation, blue economy ideas right into the core of national climate plans.
Moving beyond just land use or energy.
Exactly. Recognizing the ocean's absolutely central role.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's shift from the global environment to something more personal, but with massive societal ripples. Population trends.
Ah, yes, the UNFPA report, Street of World Population 2025. And the title, it really makes you stop and think. The real fertility crisis.
The real fertility crisis. Okay, what's the angle here?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The report basically reframes the whole conversation. It argues the real crisis isn't just about falling numbers or fears of overpopulation.
Which is what you usually hear about.
Right. Instead, it talks about a reproductive agency crisis.
Reproductive agency crisis. What do they mean by that?
It means people lacking the power, the ability, the agency to achieve the family size they want, whether that's having more kids or fewer kids.
So it's about constraints, lack of real choice or support.
Exactly. It shifts the focus away from state targets or national anxieties onto individual rights and capabilities.
That's a pretty big reframing, less about controlling populations, more about empowering people. How does India fit into this picture?
The sources highlight what they call a fertility duality in India. You've got states like Bihar, UP, Jharkhand, with still quite high fertility rates.
Right.
Contrasting sharply with states like Delhi, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, which are already below replacement level fertility, which is about, 2.0 children per woman?
Huge regional differences then. So what are the barriers, according to the report, that create this agency crisis in India? What stops people achieving their goals?
Several things. Financial constraints are massive, cited by 4 in 10 people.
Money troubles. Makes sense.
Beyond just income, there are big structural barriers. Job insecurity, finding affordable housing, and a real lack of affordable childcare. So the practical stuff of raising a family is tough.
So it's not just about contraception access, it's the whole socioeconomic picture.
Precisely. And social pressures play part too. About 19% reported pressure from family or partners to have fewer children.
Interesting.
And then there are these sort of modern anxieties factoring in worries about climate change, political instability, even feelings of loneliness, changing gender norms, all influencing family-size decisions.
India has seen a very sharp drop in overall fertility, though, over the decades.
Oh, absolutely. The sources mention a dramatic fall from around 5 children per woman in 1970 down to 2 in 2025.
And that's mostly down to
Increased education, better healthcare access. But, and this is the report's key point, despite that overall trend, big gaps remain between states, caste groups, income levels. These gaps still limit real reproductive rights and choices for many people.
So, based on all that, what does UNFPA recommend for India specifically?
Well, they strongly push for expanding sexual and reproductive health services, making sure access is universal.
And that includes
Contraception, yes, but also safe abortion services and infertility care. Recognizing agency cuts both ways, wanting fewer or more children.
Right, addressing the full spectrum.
And then tackling those structural barriers we talked about. Supportive policies for affordable childcare, better education access, housing issues, flexible work arrangements.
And crucially, making sure these services and policies actually reach everyone.
Exactly, making them inclusive for marginalized groups, LGBTQIA plus individuals, unmarried people too. It's about equity.
Ensuring reproductive freedom isn't just an average statistic, but a reality for everyone. That ties back to UNFPA's core mission, right?
Right, back to their founding mission from 1969, guaranteeing sexual and reproductive rights and choices for all.
It's a really comprehensive look at a complex issue. Okay, switching gears again, let's look at cities. Urban development, governance. The sources talked about special purpose vehicles, SPVs, under the Smart Cities mission.
Yes, and what's interesting here is the decision that these SPVs, they're going to continue. They'll keep operating, even though the Smart Cities mission itself formally ended back on March 31st, 2025.
So they're not just dissolving, now the mission's over. That sounds, well, significant. Remind us, what were these SPVs set up to do?
Sure. They were really the engine room of the Smart Cities mission, which launched back in 2015.
Right.
An SPV was set up in each of the 100 selected cities. Registered under the Companies Act, ownership was 50.5 between the state or UT government and the local city council, the urban local body or ULB.
And they had their own CEO, their own board?
Yep, full-time CEO, board with reps from center, state, and the ULB.
And their main job was project implementation.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Planning, developing, actually executing the mission's projects. And they seem to have done pretty well.
How so?
By March 2025, the sources say over 93% of the 8,000-plus planned projects were finished. And almost all the money allocated, like 99.44% of the Oro 48,000 core budget, was dispersed. That suggests they were pretty effective at getting things done.
That is a strong track record. So the big question now is, what happens next? How do these experienced SPVs get repurposed or used now the mission's officially wrapped up?
The Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs put out an advisory with some ideas. One is they could shift to providing tech support to the ULBs.
Like helping with cybersecurity, data analytics, managing city data systems.
Exactly. Or they could continue in a project role, maybe developing new bankable projects, perhaps charging a fee for that service.
Almost like becoming internal consultants or project managers for the city councils.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Leveraging the expertise they've built up. They could also help ULBs with research, assessments for better planning, even help facilitate investment, structuring projects, coordinating procurement.
That actually makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Instead of just disbanding and losing all that capacity
Right.
that proved effective, they're trying to keep it and redeploy it for ongoing urban needs.
Yeah, if you look at the bigger picture, it kind of signals that maybe this model, having these dedicated, focused bodies for specific tasks and tech support at city level, it might have value beyond just the smart cities mission context.
Interesting. Okay, from city structures to a challenge many cities face, especially now. Flood management. The monsoon season is here or coming. The sources mentioned a review by the Home Minister, emphasizing India's zero-casualty approach.
Yes, that zero-casualty principle, it's really a cornerstone of India's disaster management policy. The review also really pushed for using space technology more in flood control.
Okay, space tech. Let's break down the strategies mentioned for flood management based on the sources. What are the key parts?
Well, on the structural side, the physical stuff, there were directives about integrating proper drainage into road designs, especially state and district highways, to stop waterlogging.
Makes sense. What else?
Increasing forest cover in river basins was another key point, like in the Narmada Basin. For wide basin health, reducing soil erosion, because that silts up rivers and makes flooding worse.
That forest cover point is important, shows how environmental strategy is part of disaster management.
Fully integrated. The sources also make a distinction between structural and non-structural measures overall.
Okay. Structural includes
Things like reservoirs, they mentioned the DDC dams and the Damodar Basin as examples, storing excess water. Embankments are huge too, especially in flood-prone states. Over 37,000 kilometers apparently built under the flood management program.
wow.
And using natural depressions or wetlands as detention basins, like the Mokamatala in Bihar, that's also structural.
Got it. And the non-structural side, what does that involve?
That's more about planning, policy, getting information out.
Yeah.
Floodplain zoning is key there, regulating building in flood-prone areas.
Trying to keep development out of harm's way.
Right. And flood forecasting, which the Central Water Commission, the CWC, manages, that's highlighted as being super cost-effective. And here's something interesting. The forecast window has apparently been extended from 3 days to 7 days now.
7 days. That's a massive improvement for preparation and response time.
Huge difference. And this is where the space technology piece gets really interesting. The source lists several ways satellites are being used. Okay. Real-time flood monitoring and mapping. Organizations like ISRO's National Remote Sensing Center, NRSC, enable this. They apparently provided critical flood maps during major events like the Kerala floods in 2018, Assam in 2022.
So using satellite images to see exactly where the water is almost as it happens.
Pretty much live, yeah. And that data feeds into early warning systems, like those under the National Hydrology Project. They combine satellite data with weather inputs from the IMD and water level data from CWC for predictive alerts.
Clever.
Space tech also helps with flood hazard zoning and longer-term planning. State-level flood hazard atlases, using historical satellite data like Bihar's atlas, help pinpoint vulnerable areas. That informs decisions like maybe relocating settlements.
So it's shifting from just reacting during a crisis to proactive long-term risk reduction.
And crucially, satellite communication SATCOM keeps people connected during floods, which is absolutely vital when normal phone lines and networks go down.
Essential for coordinating the response.
Yeah. And web platforms like NRSC's BHUVN are key for getting all this critical flood data out quickly to the disaster management authorities at national and state levels.
That is a really comprehensive use of technology. Prediction, mapping, communication definitely feels like a topic we need to keep track of.
It really highlights the multi-pronged approach you need. Engineering, planning, forecasting technology, all working together.
Okay, let's shift focus now to a specific infrastructure project, one that's generated a lot of debate because of where it is, the Etalin Hydropower Project. The sources say the Forest Advisory Committee gave it in principle approval.
That's right. The Forest Advisory Committee, or CFAC. It's an important statutory body under the Forest Conservation Act of 1980.
Okay, and its job is?
Its main role is to advise the central government when there are proposals to use forest land for something else, like mining or building infrastructure. But, and this is important, their advice is just that advice. It's recommendatory. The government makes the final call.
Got it. So FAC approval is a key step, but not the final green light. Where exactly is this Etalin project?
It's located in the Dibang Valley of Arunachal Pradesh. And this particular area is, well, incredibly important ecologically.
How so?
It's part of the Eastern Himalaya Global Biodiversity Hotspot. There are only 36 of these high spots in the whole world.
Wow. Okay.
They're recognized for having exceptionally high numbers of endemic species found nowhere else, that are facing significant habitat loss.
Right. That location immediately tells you why this is controversial. What are the specifics of the project, the scale?
It's big. Planned capacity is 3,097 milliW. It involves building 2 large gravity dams, one on the Dry River, another on the Tello River, which is also called the Tangan River locally.
2 dams, big capacity, in a global biodiversity hotspot. The environmental impact must be pretty significant.
They are. And that's really the heart of the controversy. The project is estimated to involve felling around 2.7 lakh trees, that's 270,000 trees.
270,000 trees.
And diverting over 1,100 hectares of what's classified as unclassed forest land.
Felling that many trees in a global hotspot, that's a huge ecological hit. What does that kind of habitat loss mean for the wildlife there?
Well, this area is home to quite a few threatened species. The sources mention about 6 globally threatened mammal species, 3 endangered, 3 vulnerable. But the bird diversity is particularly striking.
Oh, yeah.
This region hosts something like 56% of all bird species found across India.
More than half of India's bird species in that one area.
Yeah. And within that, there are 3 very rare, restricted range endemic bird species, meaning they live only there, nowhere else on Earth.
Wow. So losing habitat on this scale could be just devastating for those unique species. Were there other concerns mentioned about local communities?
Yes. Local indigenous communities, particularly the Adi and Idu Mishmi tribes who live in the Dibang Valley, they've strongly opposed the project.
What are their main concerns?
It centers on potential displacement, losing their traditional lands, their livelihoods, their cultural practices, which are all deeply, deeply tied to the forest ecosystem.
So this project really crystallizes that classic conflict, doesn't it? National needs for infrastructure, energy versus environmental conservation, especially in fragile areas. And alongside that, the rights and concerns of local and indigenous people.
It's a really complex development versus environment dilemma, made even tougher because the biodiversity is so critical and you have these vital issues of indigenous rights and cultural survival right in the mix.
Okay, let's pivot to the economy now, specifically microfinance. The sources highlighted comments from an RBI deputy governor suggesting a sense of crisis.
Yes, the main red flag mentioned was a significant drop year-on-year in the sector's gross loan portfolio, or GLP, down by 13.9%.
13.9% drop. That's substantial.
It is, and the source links this mainly to growing stress among borrowers, which then leads to microfinance institutions, MFIs, lending less.
Okay, before we go deeper, maybe just a quick definition. What exactly is microfinance?
Sure. Microfinance, or microcredit, as it's often called, is basically providing small-scale financial services, mostly small loans, but sometimes savings, insurance, other things too.
To whom?
To individuals and small businesses who typically can't get services from regular banks, often because they're low income or live in remote areas.
Got it. So what are the main challenges these MFIs are facing right now, according to the source?
There are quite a few, both structural and operational. One big one is just the high cost of reaching people.
Because their clients are often remote, and the loan sizes are small.
Exactly. Reaching them efficiently is expensive. The sources point out India's MFI outreach is still quite low, around 8%, compared to, say, Bangladesh, it's 65%. So huge potential market, but reaching it is tough.
And that cost probably contributes to
High interest rates, that's another major challenge. MFIs typically charge between 12% and 30%. That's way higher than standard bank rates of 8% to 12%.
Why so high?
High fixed transaction costs for each small loan, and the limited volume per loan just drives up the relative cost.
Are they reaching everyone who needs them, even with the current outreach?
Well, the source points out the urban poor are often underserved. Only about 800 MFIs specifically focus on cities. And loan defaults are a huge problem.
Because there's often no collateral.
Right. Lack of collateral, sometimes maybe not enough risk management. The source mentioned a really high rate of delayed payments, over 70% are reportedly late. That just hammers MFI cash flow and sustainability.
70% late payments. That must make things incredibly difficult.
It really does. They also rely heavily on commercial banks for their own funding. About 80% comes from banks. So if banks change their lending policies, MFIs are vulnerable.
Okay.
And finally, there's a lack of product diversity. They're still very focused on just giving out loans. Other useful services like insurance, savings, remittances, they're rarely offered.
So a vital sector for financial inclusion, but facing serious headwinds. Cost, risk, funding, limited products. Are there government support systems in place?
Yes, the sources mentioned SEDB's microfinance scheme, which provides finance to NGOs and MFIs, sometimes asking for equity support from them. And of course, the very established self-help group bank linkage program.
That's been around a while, hasn't it?
Since 1992. Formulated by NABARD, it's still a major channel for microfinance delivery in India.
Okay, that gives us a good snapshot of the microfinance sector, its role, the serious challenges, and the support structures.
Yeah, and if you connect it again, the health of this sector is just critical for pushing financial inclusion forward, empowering marginalized communities. So understanding these challenges is really relevant.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of detailed ground. Maybe let's do a quick round on some other points from the sources, a sort of rapid fire.
Sure. Let's do it. Geopolitics first. There's mention of Israel's first naval strike on Yemen's Hodeidah port.
Hodeidah port, strategically important.
Very. It's on the Red Sea coast. Absolutely vital for Yemen. Something like 70% of its imports and 80% of humanitarian aid come through Hodeidah and nearby ports.
Right, so any disruption there has huge humanitarian consequences. Okay, what else?
Something called SARAT, Search and Rescue Aid Tool.
SARAT.
Yeah, it was activated by Inquai after container ship fire off the Kerala coast. It's an Indian tool developed by SO Inquai under MAKE in India.
And what does it do?
It helps predict where things that drift at sea, like containers or debris, might move. Uses ocean modeling. The Coast Guard, Navy, Coastal Police use it for search and rescue.
That's a brilliant practical use of ocean science for safety. Okay, next, something from physics.
Yes, the Kuntrin experiment in Germany. It's looking closely at the decay of tritium, molecular tritium, to try and figure out the mass of neutrinos.
Neutrinos, those are the really tiny, elusive particles.
Exactly. Lightest known particles, no electric charge, barely interact with anything. Super hard to detect. Katrin wants to pin down their absolute mass.
Fascinating. From the incredibly small to large cultural events.
Sri Lanka recently celebrated Posen Poya. It's on the June full moon.
And it commemorates
the arrival of Buddhism in Sri Lanka over 2,000 years ago, brought by Arahat Mahinda, who was Emperor Ashoka's son.
the historical connection to India.
Exactly. A key value highlighted is nonviolence, ahimsa. It's considered the second most important festival after Vesak for Sri Lankan Buddhists.
Significant event. How about air quality? Anything there?
The Commission for Air Quality Management in NCR and Adjoining Areas, CAQM. It's a statutory body set up in 2021 under the Environment Ministry.
Focused just on Delhi NCR and nearby areas.
Right. NCR plus neighboring bits of Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan, UP. The news was they signed an MOU with CSIR Kirai and the School of Planning and Architecture to tackle dust pollution, specifically through better urban road redevelopment in the NCR.
Good to see targeted action on dust. Okay, biotechnology.
Researchers at the National Institute of Animal Biotechnology, NIAB, found something about preserving ovarian reserve.
Oh, interesting. How?
By reducing the activity of a specific cellular protein called cathepsin B. It's an enzyme involved in breaking down proteins. Reducing its activity seems to help preserve the ovarian reserve. Potential implications for reproductive health.
A potential breakthrough there. And, sadly, news from Ukraine.
Yes, the sources mentioned a Russian attack damaged St. Sophia Cathedral in Kyiv.
Oh no, that's a major landmark, isn't it?
Huge. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, built back in the 11th century, a profound symbol of Ukrainian history and spirituality. UNESCO listed it in 1990 for its incredible architecture, blending Byzantine and Eastern Orthodox styles, just universally significant.
It's a tragic impact on World Heritage. Okay, nearly done with the quick takes. A
Yeah.
historical figure in a government body.
June 11th was the birth anniversary of St. Kabirdas.
Kabir, yes.
Influential 15th century mystic poet saint, born in Varanasi. His whole philosophy rejected rituals, caste, idol worship, focused on one God, the formless divine, the Nirguna Bhakti tradition.
His verses are still widely known.
Absolutely. Preserved in the Kabir Bijak, Kabir Granthavali, and many are in the Adi Granth Sahib, the Sikh holy scripture. His unique language, Sant Pasha, and those enigmatic Ulat Bansi poems are really notable.
A towering figure. And the government body.
The Financial Stability and Development Council, FSDC. The finance minister chaired its 29th meeting recently.
FSDC, what's its role?
It's an apex-level body, though non-statutory, set up in 2010. Main goal is to strengthen mechanisms for financial stability across India and promote financial sector development.
So it brings together the key players.
Exactly. Chaired by the finance minister, includes heads of regulators like RBI, SEBI, PFRDA, RDI, plus key finance ministry secretaries. There's also a subcommittee chaired by the RBI governor. It's the high-level coordination forum for financial stability and development.
Got it. Ensures everyone's on the same page regarding the financial system's health.
Pretty much, yeah. Stability and growth.
Wow. We have definitely covered a huge amount of ground in this deep dive, pulled insights from, well, all over the place based on your sources today.
We really have. From big global environmental drives and these quite nuanced takes on population and reproductive rights.
Right.
To the nitty-gritty of city governance, flood management, that complex Etalin project situation, the state of microfinance, plus all those diverse quick facts.
It really does show how interconnected everything is, doesn't it? Understanding the global push for blue NDCs helps contextualize India's own environmental efforts. Looking at population isn't just numbers. It's fundamentally about rights, agency, support systems.
Exactly.
And seeing how a specific project like Etalin raises questions about biodiversity, indigenous rights, development, that links directly to the broader sustainable development and governance themes so central to, well, to your studies.
Absolutely. Pulling out these key insights, seeing the connections straight from the source material, it's just incredibly valuable for building that well-rounded perspective you need for your preparation.
It really is. And if you found this deep dive useful for your preparation today, please do think about liking and subscribing to the show.
Yeah, it genuinely helps us keep producing these tailored insights, digging into your sources every day.
Your support lets us keep doing this, breaking down the information you need.
So as you reflect on everything we've gone through today from these June 12th sources, the global ocean efforts, the complexities of population viewed through reproductive agency, the very local impacts of a huge project like Etalin in that unique hotspot.
Yeah.
Here's maybe a final thought to chew on. How do all these different threads, global environment, national population dynamics, local development conflicts, how do they actually weave together in that larger narrative of sustainable development and governance that you're constantly studying? What's the right balance that needs to be struck between economic growth, protecting the environment, social well-being, individual rights, and maybe who ultimately carries the responsibility for navigating those really complex trade-offs fairly and effectively?
Definitely something to mull over as you continue your prep.